the rest of the audience might look at that and get a little bit of an adverse reaction. As I can tell from my own comment section sometimes, that people are a little bit questioning what is really going on. Vigorous Steve here. Let's discuss the biggest mistake bodybuilders make on social media. And I've made this mistake for many years myself, so I'm guilty as charged. It basically boils down to this. Bodybuilders on social media think that their audience are bodybuilders too, when in reality, it's only a very small portion of the audience that are actually hardcore bodybuilders. I mean, you guys can let me know down below in the comment section. Do you identify or consider yourself to be a hardcore bodybuilder, or just a bodybuilder, or a recreational bodybuilder, or fall into that gym rat category that would like to know about bodybuilding, but don't really want to do everything that is involved in bodybuilding, or just to be a decent bodybuilder at that? I think most of my audience, and what I see in the fitness industry as a whole, I think the large portion of the audience, the followers, the subscribers, are interested in things that we do in bodybuilding from a training perspective, right? Find the most optimum way to train regarding hypertrophy and growth of muscle tissue, and the best way to diet, right? For cognition, for health, for fat loss, the best supplements to take, right? The best bang for your buck supplements to keep you healthy and elicit some additional benefits regarding muscle growth, health, fat loss. Obviously, that's always a hot topic. And of course, everybody's interested in the pharmacology that's involved with bodybuilding too. And I think that's a large portion of my audience. You guys are here for the PED content. All right. Every time I post a drug video, I get way more views than when I post a video like this, giving you guys some food for thought and mindset advice. So it's all good, right? I try to keep it a little bit broader on this YouTube channel and not dive down the rabbit hole of drugs, and only drugs, because that gets boring fast. So I do understand that most of the audience in the fitness industry are just interested in what we do as bodybuilding. And well, I don't consider myself to be a hardcore bodybuilder anymore. I've done that for 20 years, 15 years in total, right? And with intermediate phases of not being so hardcore, or taking a break and traveling, and right, resolving the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which I got thanks to bodybuilding, right? The lifestyle of bodybuilding and everything that's involved. So that's why I was open and transparent about what was going on and took you along the journey. And now you guys are on the journey of muscle memory as well. So I do understand that the longer I am on YouTube, is that the audience might not necessarily be bodybuilders after all. I'm a bodybuilder, maybe not a hardcore bodybuilder anymore. But you guys might just be interested in aspects of what we do in bodybuilding. So going forward, that's kind of what I have to keep in mind. I'm keeping in mind that you guys might not be bodybuilders, are not interested in doing these super extreme stuff that we tend to do in bodybuilding, like size at all costs, with injecting a ton of different peptides and 6,000 calorie diets and moving mountains of weight. Let's be honest, it's a very small niche of the fitness industry, this hardcore bodybuilding niche. This hardcore content that I find super interesting, and that maybe some of you find super interesting, is only benefiting a very small amount of people when you look at the fitness industry as a whole. And I'm not saying that I'm going to go vanilla, but I will introduce some things on this YouTube channel that might not necessarily have to do with bodybuilding and hardcore bodybuilding by itself, because it's very difficult to grow an audience like this. I mean, I've noticed that if I focus on hardcore bodybuilding content, and even though it gets views because it's drug-related stuff, it's not necessarily good to grow a channel. I mean, look at the bigger channels in the fitness industry. It's either lifestyle or reaction-type content. And, of course, you can react to particular things in the fitness industry intelligently and try to educate the audience. But up until now, I've tried to abstain from that because that's not the content I like to produce myself. But going forward, I might have to if I really want to grow this YouTube channel. And you see that with a lot of hardcore bodybuilding channels, is that they barely grow. And they grow at a snail's pace. Because, again, a large portion of the audience are not necessarily bodybuilders, and they would like to just take snippets from bodybuilding and incorporate that for themselves. So what I've been trying to do over the last 2 years that I'm back on YouTube is try to boil down the things that we do in bodybuilding, make it understandable, right? Make it a little bit easier to incorporate for yourself, even though you might not be a bodybuilder. So you can learn from all the good and the bad that falls into bodybuilding, right? You can take some of the good and prevent yourself from adopting a lot of the bad that is in bodybuilding. Because, well, let's be honest, there is a lot of bad in bodybuilding. Otherwise, all these bodybuilders would not be dying prematurely, right? It would take a significant toll on our health and our body and our organs just to be a little bit bigger than average and carry around all this phenomenal amount of muscle mass. But it's inherently unhealthy. Right? There's no ways around it. It's unhealthy. But you can carefully assess the risks of the pharmacology that's involved, of carrying around a super physiological amount of muscle mass and the effect that it will have on your sleep quality and your heart health and your cardiovascular system. And then outweigh that with what you want to accomplish, right? You can do all of that without necessarily ending up looking like a bodybuilder, but maybe incorporate some of the things that are commonly done in bodybuilding, albeit to a lesser extent. So going forward, that's kind of the content that I want to cater to on this YouTube channel. Take the good from bodybuilding, boil that down to something that people can learn from and incorporate for themselves, and make it a little bit more longevity orientated. Because the things that I valued when I was a young bodybuilder at the age of 26, when I started my first cycle, now that I'm going to be 38 this month, and some of those things are long been pushed to the side. Back then, I was single, not as financially secure as I am now. Now I'm married, and different lives, different things. Right, over the duration of 12 years, things change. Right, your life changes, and I think a lot of you could benefit from the experience that I've gotten along the way over my 12-year performance-enhancing drug journey and the 11 years that I was drug-free previously. I think a lot of people, the audience, can benefit from bodybuilders if we, and I guess I'm one of the few, when you look at it, I'm one of the few coaches who actually has a YouTube channel and actively shares what he or she has learned over the 10 years that he's been coaching athletes. I mean, which other bodybuilding coach has a YouTube channel and uploads videos frequently? I mean, there's a ton of bodybuilding specific membership websites out there. I mean, Jordan Peters got his Trained by JP website, and John Meadows had the Mountain Dog membership website. John Jewett's got the J3 University. I mean, they're all very solid membership websites, but they're catered towards bodybuilders. And there's only so many bodybuilders that could actually benefit from the information that's either behind the paywall or the hardcore bodybuilding content that's sometimes being put out on YouTube. And, then the 90% or 95%, the rest of the audience might look at that and get a little bit of an adverse reaction. As I can tell from my own comment section sometimes, that people are a little bit questioning what the hell is really going on. And, it might be a little bit obscene. That's why these membership websites are there. So the owner of a membership website, right, the bodybuilders that run these membership websites, can acquire a select group of members with like-minded ideals. So it's very easy to collect a group of people that agree with what you're doing, right, because they're paying for this membership website and are actively seeking this kind of information. And yet, if a lot of this information goes public, right, everything that I've learned over the last 20 years, I'm just taking public here on YouTube, more people could benefit from this. Not only the bodybuilders, but people who are generally into health and fitness or just health and don't even work out. They might still be able to learn something. I know there's a lot of medical students watching this YouTube channel that are very interested in the pharmacodynamics and the pharmacology from a use perspective, but would never, ever consider using these drugs that I might discuss on this YouTube channel or some of the other YouTube channels, which are also very public and open about what goes on in the nootropics field or the bodybuilding field. And right, all these guys that take their information public, it benefits a much larger demographic in the fitness industry than just the bodybuilders. Because I also noticed that bodybuilders tend to reject a lot of the new information that is coming into the market, right? A GLP-1 receptor agonist. No, I'd like to suffer, and right, that's a blue-collar work ethic. I'd rather suffer through my diet. But why? When there's a pharmacological intervention to help you take the mind off of dieting so you can be more productive and focus on business. So you can make some money and afford all the blood work that's required to be a bodybuilder on, well, a boatload of performance-enhancing drugs just to look phenomenally huge. Right? All these new drugs that myself, Leo, Derek are introducing into the fitness space, some of those are actively being rejected. That won't work, right? It's not going to put any muscle on you. Bodybuilders are quite stubborn, and it might take a long period of time before there's general adoption of synthetic carrier oils, for example. I mean, I get messages on a daily, Steve, where are the studies? There are no studies on synthetic carrier oils because they're not FDA approved. And studying those carrier oils, which are not FDA approved, would be considered unethical. Yet, many people in the fitness space and a lot of these sources, they use polyethylene glycol or monoethyl glycol or glycol or ethyl oleate, which is FDA approved in certain parts of the world. But still, all these oils, personally, I would avoid. And you're asking me for a study? There are no studies. This is just from pure anecdotal evidence that I've seen on thousands of people's blood work running this underground synthetic garbage. C-reactive protein through the moon and maybe over time toxic kidney stress. Right? That's why I'm actively trying to teach you guys to avoid this kind of stuff. And I understand that a lot of you might not even benefit from it because you're only running 1 milliliter of testosterone per week, being your hormone replacement therapy. But 1 milliliter of testosterone cypionate or enanthate for hormone replacement therapy per week over a decade adds up, right? That's 52 milliliters per year, which is that 520 milliliters of synthetic carrier oil, or you decide to go with an organic one that's FDA approved, like cottonseed or sesame or castor oil, for example, right? All these things, it might take another decade before this generally adopted, but I know a lot of you guys that are not necessarily bodybuilders are actively benefiting from this idea because I get the messages all the time. Steve, I switched from this brand to pharmaceutical grades and my overall quality of life improved. My inflammatory markers came down. My blood work improved. My liver enzymes came down. I don't feel this pain. I don't feel sick. I don't feel test flu and all. Man, the amount of side effects that people sometimes mention, I mean, it should get adopted on a broad scale, but, well, it might still take some time. So for me, this YouTube channel, I would just put everything forward that I've learned over the last couple of years, understanding that a large portion of my audience is not necessarily bodybuilders. I would like to see other bodybuilders do the same, not just focus on the hardcore meathead content. I know I'm training so hard, I'm following progressive overload, and the drugs are just a small portion. No, the drugs are a huge portion of bodybuilding. A huge portion. Doesn't mean you can't run low dosages and good results. But if you want to be hardcore bodybuilding, unless you were blessed with phenomenal genetics and you can get away with a little bit, that's only the case for maybe 1%, maybe even less, the top echelon of bodybuilders that get to go to the Olympia. And they'll probably run comparable amounts of my highest dosages still, but they get twice as big as a result of it. So, and I really hope that more bodybuilders in the future will come forward and actively try to share what they've learned along their bodybuilding journey, whether that's the goods, the bads, and everything that falls in between. Actively share what they've learned along their bodybuilding journey, so people who are interested in bodybuilding, or the audience which might like to learn from bodybuilding but don't necessarily consider themselves to be bodybuilders or have no aspirations to be one, can take their experiences, like you guys can take from my experience, the good with the bad, and make a decision for yourself. Make an accurate risk to reward assessment and see if bodybuilding is even worth it. Or maybe you say, well, it's not really worth it, but I would still like to learn from a couple things that Vigorous Steve has shared on YouTube. Because from a financial perspective, the time investment required to be a good bodybuilder and the sacrifices that occur on health, for a lot of people are not going to be worth it. Really. I've seen it happen more often than not. There's only a very small percentage of people that actually make it in bodybuilding, and the people that you might listen to are the very small percentages that made it and then glorify this bodybuilding like it's the pinnacle of health and the pharmacology is not that important. But for the 95% that didn't make it, that didn't have a good genetic response, where the pharmacology was a lot more important, right? Those guys you don't listen to. Those guys you don't hear about. Those guys ended up not financially secure. Those guys don't even go on YouTube, or they're washed up bodybuilders to the point you don't even want to listen to them, which is something that the audience might need a reality check. It might be better to listen to a previous bodybuilder that went through the journey and then decided to call it quits before their health took a tremendous hit. It might be better to listen to those guys so you can make an accurate assessment whether you want to go down the same road or take something from bodybuilding and incorporate that for yourself, or just quit while you're ahead and say, you know what, I'm going to pick up cycling or chess because this bodybuilding thing might not seem to be worth it. Well, for me, it was worth it, right? Hardcore bodybuilding for a certain period of time was worth it. But for some of you guys, it might not be worth it at all. And as I continue with this YouTube thing, I am consciously aware that the large portion of you guys would just like to learn about how to do this as safely as possible, but not maybe do all the work required to be a bodybuilder. Simply get the best and the productive and the healthy aspects that we can draw from bodybuilding, but not do all the extreme stuff, right? So I will still offer both, so you guys can have the total picture, right? I like to present the total picture, whether that's income or nutrition or supplementation or pharmacology and everything else that falls in between, or maybe longevity and right, blood work and all that stuff. I actively share that on this YouTube channel. I would just wish more bodybuilders would follow suit, because it seems that I'm one of the few. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're looking for the most comprehensive guides to bodybuilding pharmacology, you can find the ebooks on my website, vigoroussteve.com/shop. Personalized advice always available through consultations. You can find the rates in the consultation section. Follow me on Instagram at vigoroussteve. Former hardcore bodybuilder, front double bicep, and well, still semi-bodybuilder, front double bicep for you guys. Vigorous crew, you guys know what to do. I know you guys already liked and commented, but anyway, much appreciated. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.